gone. First and foremost, I would have drawn your attention to the story from Numbers. It's not the most unusual episode in the Old Testament, and not even for the Exodus. And it's undoubtedly here today because of the gospel text from John and John's allusion back to the serpent being lifted up on the pole, which he uses for Christological purposes. Why the Hebrews told it in the first place is a bigger mystery. And we talked before about, the creation myth of the Babylonians, and both I have talked about it, Cheryl's talked about it in the Revelation class, but you can see how, the Hebrews appropriated stories from other cultures, and some of them very ancient stories, to tell their own story. And it would be hard for us to really trace all of the parallels in ancient mythologies that involve snakes and then assess why their tradition was appropriated for this particular story. I said just tongue-in-cheek in the announcement for this week about the text that, boy, I can remember the serpent. What a come down for him. He used to be able to walk around in the garden and talk with humans, and now this. But the most obvious connection with this story is to the ancient Greek god of healing, Asclepius. And his symbol was two snakes entwined around a pole, which is where the AMA got its symbol. And the basic idea was that the opposites which are at war within a person when they are ill are brought into harmony, resulting in the healing of that person. Now that's a loaded notion. And a story that I once shared from the folklore of the indigenous people was about a grandfather talking to his grandson about the two wolves which struggle within him. One is good and one is evil, and they're constantly fighting. And the boy asks, which one will win the fight? Which one is more powerful? And the grandfather answers, the one that you feed. The other odd feature is that the cure for the snake and the bite is to look at the snake. It's the hair of the dog that bites you, But this also comes from Greek culture. The pharmakon, well, that's a familiar name, pharmakon, a drug that is a poison, but that, when taken in the right doses, is also the remedy. And then even curiouser, the pharmakos, which is translated as sorcerer, was one who was accused of evil and run out of town and often killed then for the benefit of the community, a form of scapegoating. And it becomes almost like taking a drug. And the poison of violence, taken in the right dosage, can bring a relative measure of peace and security to the community. So then, knowing this, I might have turned to John's gospel, asking why he would have appropriated this story in turn. And what did he know about it? And when did he know it? Was he saying that the cross of Jesus helps us to really get to the roots of our own sickness by making us face the snake that has bitten us? Lifted up like Moses, lifting the snake to bring healing. Or perhaps heading down the other road, does Jesus become the very poison that is killing us? And like the pharmakos, becomes the scapegoat of our own evil, driven out of town and killed, with a measure of sacred sanctioned violence that will make all things right with the world once he is gone. Violence in just the right dosage to bring a relative measure of peace. Of course, we hear anything from John's third chapter, and all we can think about is the second verse we have in this text today, John 3:16. Something out of context, which needs to be taken in context to be understood, but which was appropriated by 19th century fundamentalism as their mantra, and which has contaminated the American take on Christianity, so much so that we as Episcopalians are included in the broad brushstroke that defines Christianity today. And in my learned and studied opinion and experience, that contamination is so wrong and grants permission to do so much mischief and harm. real harm to people. Which brings me to where I decided to go today, which is simply a song. I was talking with our prayer warden earlier this week about her retreat, and she mentioned a song that I'd like to play for you. She said at the time I should take it for a test drive, which I did, Barbara. And I thought immediately that I needed to find a place for it in our worship space. Maybe Sunday morning, maybe for evensong. But it kept returning to me. And I realized it was meant to be shared now. Now, when we have beaten ourselves up over everything from the pandemic to our tribal litmus tests to religion itself, which always seems to exert its influence, good or bad, in the most subtle ways, more influential than the Holy Spirit at times, I fear. We want our nation healed. We want our community healed. In fact, know it or not, we gather every Wednesday morning to pray for that. We want to gaze on that snake, the one that will help us overcome the poison that has been injected into our common lives. And just praying won't do it. We need to act. And we can begin by just letting go of what those warring entities tell us are so critical for our lives. And just start by being kind to each other. So let's feed that wolf. And as we do it, let's listen to Mary Gauthier.